If you're struggling with muddy colors, stiff compositions, or just feeling generally stuck in your art, this video is going to help you. Today, I'm sharing 7 things not to do when creating art, especially if you're just starting out or you're trying to level up. These are all things that I wish I had known sooner, and to be honest, sometimes I still have to remind myself of them. But they can all make a huge difference in how your paintings look and how you feel creating them. So, whether you're working in oils, acrylics, watercolor, or even digital, these tips will apply across the board. And I'll walk you through each of them while I paint this beautiful golden eagle's eye with oil paint. So, the first thing is don't skip the planning phase. Ugh, this is one that I often have to learn the hard way. It's so important. It makes such a difference. If you have a loose plan, or even worse, no plan, you are almost guaranteed to experience confusion and frustration through many parts of your painting. Even a quick 1 minute thumbnail sketch can make a huge difference. Part of a good planning phase is intentionally choosing a reference photo that matches your vision, but is also interesting enough that it's going to translate into a really beautiful painting. You can also ask yourself things like, where do I want my viewer to look first when looking at my artwork? And that can really help you to make some decisions in that planning phase that's going to make your life so much easier once you actually start painting. Because ultimately, from experience, painting blind makes it so much harder to fix mistakes later. And I know it can feel like putting the brakes on if you're so excited to jump into a new painting. It can feel halting to force yourself to take that time to start planning. But trust me on this, it's going to make a huge difference in the long run. So the next thing is to not be afraid of ugly phases. I personally love this one because it's a little gift that you can give to yourself as an artist to be okay with your artwork going through an ugly phase. Because every painting has that awkward, messy sort of teenager phase. So if you go in expecting it and being okay with that, and even better, if you can trust yourself enough to know that if you push through that ugly phase, something beautiful is on the other side, it's going to make your painting experience so much better because it can be really tricky to look at your artwork when it is in that ugly phase and not want to give up entirely. So one of the things I've noticed as, an artist that is also trying to be seen online is always trying to chase that like Instagram fame with your artwork makes this process even harder because you want to be able to be seen online as you're working on your paintings. But sometimes it can be really hard when your painting is in that ugly phase and you still want to share something, but you have that mental block. Now, you can still go ahead and share your painting in progress while it's in that phase. And one of the things that I love doing is just talking openly about it with your audience because they're going to relate. If there's other artists following you and they see somebody else talking about that ugly phase, it's going to make them feel seen and make them feel more secure in their own artwork as well because it's just a reality of creating artwork. Sometimes that underpainting can look real scary, but we know that putting that time into that foundation, even if it looks kind of freaky in the beginning, we know it's the secret to creating a rock solid painting in the future. You just have to trust the process. And yeah, so this is me telling you that it is completely okay for your artwork to go through ugly phases. In fact, it's an important part of the process, and you just got to push through on the other side, and that's where you will be rewarded with a beautiful painting. So, the next thing to not do when creating artwork is to jump into details too early. So, for instance, if you start adding whiskers to your cat portrait before you've actually established the structure and the values and the 3D form of your cat, that's a recipe for disaster. So you want to go from building your big shapes to your medium shapes and then your smaller shapes, your detail, on top. We want to make sure that we have a rock solid foundation for your artwork first. And if you've ever done any of my tutorials or ever watched any of my tutorials here on YouTube, you're going to know that I always like to emphasize putting in a solid effort to build up an underpainting first. And in that underpainting, you are not paying attention to detail whatsoever. You are establishing your values, and through those values, you are building up the 3D form of your painting. Details come later. I know details are fun. I get it. I get caught up in this all the time, but saving the fun stuff, those fun little details for the end is going to make sure that you have a much stronger painting. And if you spend too much time doing details too early in your painting process, you're probably going to have to paint over them anyways. So you're going to end up losing all that hard work. Save yourself. Don't jump into details too early. So the next thing for what not to do when creating artwork, and this one is a little bit of a mental game, but it is so important, especially in this world of social media where beautiful artwork is available at the tap of your finger. And this is to not compare yourself to artists who are further ahead of you. I fall prey to this all the time. I know you do too. With social media, it's so easy to get caught up in seeing people's highlight reel. And you kind of forget that what they're posting online is not necessarily reality. Every artist starts as a beginner. No one skips that phase. So instead of comparing yourself to artists who have been at it longer than you, that have put in more reps than you, instead, what you can do is you can ask yourself, what are they doing that you can study? How can you learn from them? How can you use them as a source of inspiration that isn't going to leave you feeling like your artwork is lesser? A great way to instead kind of compare yourself to see your progress is rather than comparing yourself to other artists, is compare yourself to past you. So look at your old artwork that you've created to measure your progress instead of comparing yourself to others. So your art path is your own. It is beautiful and it's unique, and it's beautiful and unique to you, not anyone else. So don't rush it. So rather than getting stuck in that highlight reel that is social media and scrolling endlessly through all that beautiful artwork, and at the end of the day, kind of feeling down about it, understand that this is your path and you are in control of it. So don't rush it and enjoy the process. So the next thing not to do when creating artwork is to not just use black and white paint for your shadows and highlights. So painting black and white fur as an animal artist is actually some of my favorite colors to paint, even though they're some of the hardest. And that's because it is all too easy to just stick with the basics. If you're painting black fur, just basically stick with ivory black and titanium white. When you do this, though, you tend to end up with tones that are just really flat and lifeless and dead. And that's just not truly reflective of what nature is. Here's the thing. These colors, black and white, so as, an animal artist, I like to paint a lot of black and white fur. When you look at it, those fur colors are filled with so much color. They reflect so much of their environment. So rarely are those things, those black fur bits, the white fur bits, whatever you're painting, they are very rarely only those colors. And that is why whenever I am jumping into the glazing phase of my paintings, I absolutely love to jump in and add some gorgeous rich colors into those shadows. So for instance, I always go in and mix a shadow glaze, as I call it, which has purple in it. Sometimes it's got blue in it. It always has brown, a little bit of black, just to darken things, but there's always color that I'm packing in there, and it just helps to add the most beautiful richness to those shadows. And same thing goes for your highlights, or if you're painting something like white fur. There's going to be so many gorgeous colors in there. Typically, the shadows in your white fur are going to lean a little bit more cool, so you can add some nice purpley bluey tones in those shadows. And then having a bit of warmth in your highlights is just going to make so much more impact and just create fur that's really beautiful and full of life and so far from being that flat, lifeless fur that you would get if you were just using black and white. So the next thing I want you to not do when creating artwork is forgetting to step back from your artwork. Here's the thing. Sometimes when you're like really into that painting session and you're nice and close, you're really into it, your artwork is filling your entire field of vision. It can kind of lead to things being a little skewed. And sometimes you actually need to take a physical step back from your painting in order to see the bigger picture. You might get tunnel vision if you are too close to your artwork for too long. And then when you finally take that step back, it becomes apparent that, oof, you've got some big glaring issues that you then need to fix. So for me personally, in my art practice, I mostly paint standing up at my easel. And one of the reasons why I do this is because it makes it a lot easier for me to just step backwards and actually physically distance myself from my artwork. It's a really useful trick to be able to kind of check your proportions, check your balance. And even if you want to flip your canvas or kind of look at it in a mirror, these are other ways that you can kind of distance yourself from that artwork, get a different perspective, and kind of view things with a fresh set of eyes. And it's going to give you so much clarity, both literally and creatively. So the last thing I want you to not do when creating artwork is to treat mistakes like failures. Here's the thing. Mistakes are information. They show you what's working and what's not. And in my personal opinion and experience, sometimes learning from your mistakes is so much more powerful than learning from your successes. And here's the thing. Every artist makes mistakes. It's part of the process, even professionals. So rather than, making a mistake in your artwork and thinking, ugh, I suck, this artwork sucks, I'm never going to get better, try something different. Ask yourself, okay, why didn't this work? What did I do? What did I not do? So the more that you actually start to pull on the thread of figuring out why something happened and how you can do things differently next time is going to be so powerful for helping you to grow as an artist. And the thing is the more you experiment, the more reps you put in, the more artwork you create, the more you're going to grow. So, in my opinion, the biggest mistake of all is not showing up at your easel at all. So, if you've done any of these things, awesome. That means that you are out there learning. Mistakes are how we grow, and that's true for all artists. Every brushstroke teaches you something new, which is sometimes why you just have to get your reps in. You just have to get out there creating artwork, doing that thing, getting it messy, and just letting beautiful things happen. You're improving more than you realize, so don't stop now. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.